In my last video, I spoke of the more popular creatures from the Resident Evil franchise. The only animal I spoke of, however, was the Cerberus zombie dog, but there are many more animals and plants infected by the T-virus. So in today's video, I will be going over said creatures. Let's start off with the plants, since there are only a couple of them, not including boss fights of course. The monster plant is found in a fountain in the Spencer Mansion's greenhouse. It was infected by T-virus contaminated water, transforming its vines into agile appendages that prevent intruders from proceeding further into the room. Chris comes across this mutant plant in an attempt to reach the armor key, but the plant prevents him from reaching it, so he inserts herbicide into the water pump. The chemical contaminated water kills the plant, and Chris is able to reach the key and herbs behind the plant's withered vines. Next we have the ivy. During the Raccoon City destruction incident, Umbrella's underground laboratory nest was put under lockdown due to William Birkin's rampage and the T-virus outbreak he unintentionally caused. As the lockdown suspended all activities within the facility, Umbrella researchers found that Plant 43's behavior to be growing increasingly hostile due to the lack of proper maintenance. Since the lockdown prevented the team's proper maintenance of the creature, as well as being unable to produce P-epsilon gas to contain it, Plant 43 inevitably lashed out, killing many of the team before spreading into the ventilation shafts. As it attacked the researchers, Plant 43 had also implanted them with seedlings. These mutated seedlings would then take root in the victims' bodies as a sort of parasite, and would wildly alter the host's internal anatomy. This resulted in plant-based walking corpses looking to prey on anything alive. But in order to eat, the parasite formed a mouth, through altering the head of its host to become a large disguised set of jaws, with which flesh from victims were transferred into the host's stomach through the throat. These creatures also had large orange bulbs throughout their body that are susceptible to firearms. However, only flames were capable of permanently killing them. They were shown to be unaffected by the release of the P-epsilon gas that was usually used to contain Plant 43, although the gas had successfully killed the larger plant, putting a halt in development of any more ivy zombies. These creatures would all be destroyed following the nest facility's self-destruction sequence being activated. These types of ivy are exclusive to the RE2 remake. In the original RE2, we have the Plant 43 enemy, which is also sometimes referred to as the ivy, and also different than the Plant 43 found in the remake. In the remake, you just do a quick puzzle and destroy one Plant 43, while in the original you come across multiple plants. So in the original, these are an offspring of Plant 42, a boss enemy from RE1. The bioweapon series was quickly improved upon, adding the ability to walk. These were actually undergoing testing in both Raccoon City and at Sheena Island. During the Raccoon City destruction incident, a number of Plant 43s escaped containment, eventually leaving Nest and heading into the Raccoon police station. Plant 43 has a humanoid shape with 2 arms and 2 legs, which gives it a relaxed style of walking. To keep fed, it absorbs water vapor in the atmosphere. This makes it susceptible to changes within the atmosphere, but its body may find a way to adapt to the hostile environment. These creatures can actually reproduce when they come into contact with other Plant 43s. That's gross. Despite the flaws in its design, enough research was continued to spawn the Ivy YX model found in the Dark Side Chronicles. This version was manufactured by Umbrella for sale on the black market. Javier Hidalgo was one of the customers that acquired these creatures. While similar in appearance to Plant 43, this ivy has a much more humanoid appearance, mostly in its lower portion of the body. Its methods of attack are also very identical to Plant 43. Since it has mostly human genes, it has legs that resemble those of a human, granting it much more advanced movement ability over the original ivy. These legs allow it to move much faster, removing the lack of mobility the original subjects had. And that's it for plants. Let's talk about the mutated animals. A lot of these will be short and sweet, since the animal-based enemies hardly ever pose a threat. We'll start off with some lovely snakes. An adder refers to any number of viper species found around the world. A number of adders native to Raccoon Forest living in and around the grounds of Arcli Laboratory were infected with the epsilon strain of the T-virus after eating mutated animals. Most did not exhibit major mutations apart from more potent venom, though one in particular named Yawn exhibited a rapid growth of hormones, increasing size drastically. More on that in a Bosses Explained video. The normal-sized adders continued to live and hunt in the trees, as they had done before, dropping in on anything warm-blooded, like Jill or Chris. Crows are up next. After the Raccoon City incident, many crows became infected with the T-virus after consuming smaller infected animals. Unlike the other infected animals, crows showed no signs of infection aside from their increased size. These crows were usually harmless unless they felt threatened, then they would attack in groups. During RE1, STARS Bravo team member Forrest Spire became infected with the T-virus through a crow attack. After Raccoon City became completely infected by the T-virus, crows would return and were noticeably more aggressive than the ones found at the Arcli Laboratory, attacking anything they saw. A single crow managed to bring down a member of Umbrella's private military force. Uninfected crows also exist and pose as enemies. Leon encountered normal uninfected crows on a regular basis during RE4. These crows posed no threat whatsoever, but they had the tendency of collecting shiny objects and stealing money. Some even stole hand grenades. These uninfected crows can also be found in Resident Evil 5 and 6 and both Revelations games. Similarly to crows, infected bats are, as you might have guessed, bats infected with the T-virus. First seen in the Umbrella Executive Training School, where they had taken up residence in the church above the laboratory following the outbreak caused by Queen Leech during RE0. The virus caused the bats to become more aggressive, as well as an increase in body mass. These bats were encountered by Rebecca and Richard in the underground area of the Spencer Mansion. There were also infected bats on Rockford Island, but these showed no signs of increased size. Instead, they have heightened awareness and attack in swarms, but could be avoided by light or by walking around them instead of running. Simply equipping the lighter will prevent the bats from harming the player. During the Darkside Chronicles, fruit bats would feed on T-virus infected fruit plants, becoming infected themselves, displaying the standard heightened aggression and a small increase in their size. Usually the only sign of infection was the increased aggression, but a few bats ended up mutating into an enormous size. The mutation took a heavy toll on their body, causing multiple muscle tears in their wingspan. Some uninfected bats were seen by Leon in his exploration of the village and the castle in RE4. Bats in RE5 can be killed for gold and very rarely drop grenades, and these little guys would also make an appearance in RE6 and Revelations 2. The giant moth was an experimental BOW developed by Umbrella, not to be confused with the standard moth, another infected insect which is smaller in size. The giant moth research was conducted in the Nest underground facility. During the Raccoon City destruction incident, at least one moth escaped and made the B5F computer room its nest, using the facility's air conditioning system to hunt prey and bring it back to its nest. Another giant moth was present on Sheena Island during the events of RE Survivor. The research into moth-based BOWs was considered a failure. Mutating to a larger size normally did not keep them in proportion, making their wings only strong enough to hover over the ground. However, they did also develop the ability to spit acid on their prey as a means of compensating for their flight problems. During CV, we also had moth parasites, which are the larvae of certain variations of T-infected moths. They burst from a host's chest and latch onto a victim's back. It does this when it feels its current host is threatened and needs to move to a new one, though it can survive for a while after its host is dead, and can attack by grappling its prey. These parasites are also capable of poisoning the player. The standard moth enemy was a typical moth that mutated due to prolonged exposure to the T-virus. Unlike the giant moth, these moths' wings have grown in perfect proportion to their bodies. This gives the moths incredible mobility. These creatures were encountered in the Antarctic base, where they were able to produce poisonous dust, and they would also attach eggs to the bodies that were cocooned in the corridors. These eggs would later hatch into the parasitic larvae. From one bug to another, wasps of various species were infected with the T-virus. All around the Arclight County, mutant wasps were created after feeding on the pollen of Plant 42. Due to the accidental outbreak at the Arclight laboratory, the staff were unable to control the mutant wasp nest, with at least one man succumbing to the poison. A wasp nest at a nearby abandoned hospital was also contaminated by taking the nectar of a different monster plant named Dorothy. In Raccoon City, wasp nests were infected by an unknown means. One nest was based within Raccoon University's ventilation tower, and was marked by Dr. Peter Jenkins as a source for V poison, a critical ingredient in creating daylight, a drug to fight the effects of the T-virus. As you might have guessed, wasps infected by the T-virus undergo radical size change due to the unusually high production of growth hormones. They can grow as much as 10 times their normal size, and the toxicity of a wasp poison is also mutated, making repeated stings a danger to humans. If all that didn't sound dangerous, these wasps are capable of flying at speeds of 19 miles per hour. Next up, we have a Veronica exclusive enemy. The ant is a mutated species created through the DNA altering effects of the T. Veronica virus. This species was created about 15 years before the events of RE1 under the guidance of Dr. Alexia Ashford. They were not destroyed or contained when her research had finished. Instead, they had found a home in the Antarctic base in the 15 years she was in a cold sleep. Within that time, they had constructed a towering anthill as their hive continued to grow in numbers. These ants, enhanced by the virus, grew much larger and became very aggressive, openly attacking any nearby humans. Their jaws also became strong enough to cause immense amounts of pain just from one bite. Unlike other mutants created through various strains of the T-virus, the ants remained fertile and were able to reproduce their species rather than relying on the use of cloning. The species is believed to be extinct following the destruction of the Antarctic base. And finally, we have web spinners, arguably the creepiest of the animal-based mutations. They were a series of spider-based BOWs developed by Umbrella's USA branch, specifically the Arclight Laboratory. These creatures were created through the infection of spider test subjects with an early strain of the T-virus, and were among the first bioweapons developed after the Archive Laboratory decided to move on from trying to mutate animals into weapons. While their increase in size was impressive, they were found unstable as frontline weapons. The body of web spinners was known to be poisonous and was used for both defense and offense. Their fangs could inject a potent venom into the human body that could kill within minutes, but could also spit this venom from a short distance. The web spinner's abdomen was also poisonous and could spray into enemies if ruptured in a fight. This could have proven to be useful, but their lack of intelligence made them uncontrollable and therefore a potential danger to their owners. Umbrella was also disappointed in their physical strength and had hoped for a stronger weapon, but Umbrella was impressed with their mobility and the ability to climb walls, so they were now used as a secondary unit. By the time RE1 takes place, the web spinners were declared unfit as weapons and many of them were destroyed, but several of them were left behind for further research and later escaped. A larger mutant named Black Tiger settled a nest in the caves beneath the courtyard of the Spencer Mansion, preventing the Archive Laboratory security team from destroying the nest. When the laboratory fell to a T-virus outbreak, the nest spiders were free to expand their territory. The giant spider was created by Dr. James Marcus during his early trials with the T-virus. While they appear identical to the web spinner, the two are of unrelated projects. The web spinner was created independently and without the knowledge of Marcus's earlier research. Both of these spiders can produce babies that live on their mother's back and are also infected. In Code Veronica, you can encounter black widows, a variant of the web spinner. Umbrella had collected a lot of data on arachnid reactions to the T-virus from a series of events that took place in and around Raccoon City. These widow spiders possessed a much stronger venom compared to the tarantula spiders seen around the city. Because of that, they were selected as prime test subjects. After just a few months, Umbrella had plans to distribute them to a number of their facilities via the transport terminal in the Antarctic base. However, during the Antarctic outbreak of the T-virus, the Black Widows being transported took advantage of the emergency to break out of the crates and settle down in the facility, which is where they would be encountered by the player during the events of the game. That's it for this one. I sincerely apologize for anyone with a fear of spiders or insects. Just looking at these pictures was really creeping me out. But I hope you learned something about these really weird creatures. Thank you for watching. Have yourself a lovely day.